All right, we are live on Facebook, Mick. Welcome. We're at a new place, and we can already tell that the video is not keeping up. So here we are. We're winging it like always, but
It's
that's
a little more challenging, but I think that because it happens every week, we're much better at it than we would if it was only once in a while.
yes, for sure. So I think we get right to our guest, because it's a unique situation here. Not that our guest isn't live with us, because that doesn't happen very often, but a lot of times our guest is within the United States, most of the time within a couple hundred miles of us, most of the time within a few miles of us.
Yes.
And our guest today is joining us from Germany. So Dylan Fishbach, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And Dylan, I'll just warn you that our video is not keeping up. So if there's a little, if I interrupt you or anything like that, I apologize, but we'll just so you know, that's why we're kind of delayed here, but that's all right. So Dylan, where are you joining us from?
Erfurt, Germany right now, in a little village of Exleben. So
Little village. So how many people live there?
in our village alone, just a few thousand, but in the city of Erfurt, about 200 some thousand. So
Okay, so a little bigger than Sioux Falls.
yeah, a little bit. So
Okay.
Okay, so Dylan, let's start from the beginning. Let us know where you where you grew up, and Mick and I know your famous father. Everybody that's any familiar with the Coyotes understands who your father is, but tell us about where you grew up and things like that.
Yeah, just from Vermillion, South Dakota, obviously, where USD is. And as a kid, just spent all my days, running around the Dakota Dome, growing up, hanging out, learning everything I could from all those athletes up there. And just kind of had that stuff instilled in me from the time I was, basically since I was born. I was in the dome and seeing guys, put in their work and, see guys do what it took to get to the next levels and their respective sports and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I started, and that's kind of where I got the love for athletics and knowing that this is where I want to be eventually someday, over here playing professional sports. So
And let's touch base on that real quick before we go back. You are overseas playing professional basketball.
Yes. Yep, professional wheelchair basketball in the top league in the world over here in Germany. Was lucky enough to sign with the former German league champs, top franchise in wheelchair basketball has been for the last about 5 seasons. So I got really lucky with them, and then obviously them sticking with me through some of my issues too. So it's been a great relationship with them, and yeah, I was very lucky and very fortunate to end up with such a classy organization.
So obviously, you've been through some tough times. If you are playing wheelchair basketball, you don't just, you don't just say I want to play wheelchair basketball. Yep. There's a reason you're playing wheelchair basketball, and maybe kind of go through that story and what led to your disability.
Yeah. So when I was 10 months old, I believe for the first time I was diagnosed with rhabdomyosarcoma. It was just a form of cancer that was behind my right knee. And I went through quite a few treatments. They thought they had it cured at one point. And then it was about 10 months after that I was having pain and discomfort in the same exact spot. And then did the check, and sure enough, it returned. And that was kind of the point where they made the decision that they were going to amputate my leg to save my life. And then that was that. I got my first leg when I was, I think, 3 or 4 years old. And then that's kind of how I started with basketball. Was the USD Coyotes, their basketball team. They would take me out. Some of the guys like Nate Tibbetts, Nate Bless and Ben Reese, a lot of those guys, they would take me out on the basketball court in the dome, and they'd lift me up to shoot a basket into the hoop there. And then to teach me how to walk with my prosthetic, they'd make me walk to the other hoop at the other end and then lift me up to the hoop so I could dunk or shoot the ball up there again. And that's kind of how I learned to walk again. So that kind of started the love for basketball too. And then, yeah, that was how I lost my leg, and then got into basketball was basically with that right away. And then got into wheelchair basketball when I was about 9 or 10 years old. When my mom was at a PE clinic in Omaha, and the Coyotes, I believe, were actually playing UNO when they still had football. So we were up there, both my dad and my mom were there doing different things, working. And I was just kind of shooting baskets with my prosthetic leg on, not really thinking anything of it. And my future high school coach wheeled in a chair and was like, hey, I want you to play wheelchair basketball. And I didn't want any part of it at first because, I was playing able-bodied sports at the time, and being competitive. I was just like, no, I could still keep up with my friends, my teammates, stuff like that. So I really didn't want to play wheelchair ball at first. And then my mom kind of threw me in the car. Was like, no, you're going to try this. And if you guys know my mom, you know that if she says something that you're doing something, then you're going to do it. So I got in the car, and that was my first time seeing the sport of wheelchair basketball at my first practice when I went. And that was when I saw like the contact and the speed of the game, and saw that it wasn't some sport where it was, all right, they're just going to hand me a basketball and let me go score a basket and then pat me on the back. And, that's that. I realized once I saw practice that it was competition. It was the real sport. And it was basically, I could be a high level athlete again in the sport that I loved, but I just had to do it in a little bit different of a way. So.
Sorry, we're having a little difficulties on our end. Imagine that. If you followed our show before, imagine us having some difficulties on our end. But you mentioned not wanting anything to do with the wheelchair basketball at the time, because you were trying to figure out your prosthetic leg and all that. But what did it mean to kind of get that nudge from your mom, and then to find out what a great sport this was?
Yeah, it was great, because if you think about it, when I was growing up, I was always playing with like a disadvantage. And then, I was always trying to keep up in some way, but couldn't really do it. And then that was kind of, the leveling of the playing field, I guess you could say. And so, that was kind of where I found it. And then, finding out that, you could earn scholarships to go to college and play. Like, it was basically the same as able-bodied basketball. I just, now have a level playing field with everybody else. And so, I can see, how good at the game I could really be. And so that's kind of where I put all my chips into from that point forward.
Dylan, in the early part of it, and I could very quickly, I was in on as you maybe remember, wrote a little story about playing in an actual game against your team, the Nebraska team, and being incredibly humbled by what was going on there. And it was like I was in a dream where nothing went right, where you think like, no, this has got to be a dream. And usually it is, but not this time. It's like everything is going wrong. But going back to that, the level of competition, I would guess at some point that became something that you were attracted to, that there were other kids who cared a lot and were pretty good at it. I mean, was that part of the deal?
Yeah, it definitely was. And that was kind of, I got a sense of that more so at like my first camp, I guess you say, like there's a lot of summer camps from different colleges that they put on, just like, kind of individual camps. And then you kind of go into teams, you play with everybody from all over the country. And that was my first time seeing people from all walks of life. And you see like guys, that's when I was introduced to guys that were playing on the US national team level at that point, and guys that were playing professionally already. And that's so that was kind of the first time when I saw the higher competition, saw that there was a ton of people actually committed to the game, training, hours on end and committing themselves to the game. So, yeah, that was another reason that, really drew me into the sport and made me want to play.
So you mentioned your high school coach. How did that work? Living in Vermillion at the time, and then, okay, Vermillion doesn't have this team, but I can play somewhere else. Let us know how that worked.
Yeah, it was just kind of, again, like with I was lucky to have the parents I did, because I think a lot of other families, you hear 2.5 hours to go for one practice. That's kind of, a lot of people would think that's crazy, but my parents, I was lucky that they were just as committed as I was, from day one. So, yeah, we got in, and we were kind of all hooked at the same time. So, we didn't really think about how far it was to practices or any of that stuff. We were all in. So
that's awesome. And then you mentioned scholarships. How did that work out? Was there a recruiting process?
Yep.
Are there several teams out there? Let us know about that.
Yeah, so there's I believe there's about 10, let's say 10 to 12 programs. I can't remember the exact number anymore. It kind of changes too. But there's actually schools like Eastern Washington is one of them, actually, that's adding sports, but wheelchair sports, I should say. And but no, there's about 10 to 12 teams, and it was a recruiting process kind of just like any other. And I took 3-4 different visits, I think, and I had phone calls and stuff like that from every coach in the country except for the University of Alabama. And that was about it. And yeah, I had offers from Missouri. Missouri was the biggest one. That's where my dad wanted me to go. Texas Arlington was another great school. And then obviously it came down to University of Wisconsin Whitewater, where I ended up playing. And but yeah, it just kind of, and now in today, there's even more schools offering scholarships, higher value too. So it keeps getting better and better. And the game of wheelchair basketball is changing almost daily. So the opportunities are even more endless than they used to be.
Very good. So now you go to Whitewater. Maybe talk a little bit about that experience. Kind of obviously moving away like every kid,
Yep.
college kid, but you have this, uniqueness about you. You're in a wheelchair. How did that, play out?
Yeah, I was lucky to again, being at Whitewater, and them having the strong tradition they did of their wheelchair basketball program. And so they have a lot of disabled athletes on the campus already. So it wasn't too big of a transition. They're also known for being one of the top schools providing for disabled people, and being the most accessible school as well. So they're state of the art when it comes to, that sense. And but it was great. They had a lot of great programs in terms of helping you get advocated to with school. If you're struggling with school, they had thing for a center of students with disabilities that pretty much would help you out through anything you would need. So, and then basketball wise, it was absolutely amazing. I mean, I played for who I consider the greatest coach of all time, and Jeremy Laddie. And he was somebody I looked up to from the time he was leading the camp when I went there for the first time at 10 or 11 years old. And pretty much knew from that time forward that I wanted to play there, want to play for him. So it was a dream come true when I actually got onto campus and could play for him. So
That, hearing you talk about that experience, we often forget about those experiences that we get to enjoy, whether we have a disability or not, Nick. And, you've known Dylan for a long time,
Yeah.
like you said, since
Yeah.
he's been young. But isn't it cool to hear stories of all kids that we know that get that opportunity to play sports?
Well, absolutely. And it's not like it's a different thing. It's the same thing. It's the exact same reason that people, and it's kind of silly for me to even bring it up, but I guess that assumption is out there. It's like, well, this is a different kind of deal. And it's, yes, they're around in wheelchairs when they're competing on a basketball floor. That's different about it, but nothing else is. The commitment to becoming a good player is the exact same. The importance of winning, and the other benefits of being involved in sports and teamwork and all these things, those are all the same. And it's kind of silly to even bring it up, like I said, but it is absolutely the same. And I know Dylan would say the same thing. He's a fiercely competitive human being, and is enjoying what he's doing. And I think that's, there's nothing different about that.
So Dylan, let me ask you, for people out there that don't know the competitiveness of wheelchair basketball, people might think, oh, you got a disability, you're all in wheelchairs, so you're just trying to avoid contact. You're not really competing. How different is that than that statement right there?
It's completely different. We didn't wake up in college at 5:30 every morning to, just have things handed to us and to just, slowly go up and down a basketball court and just have people give us things. It's dog eat dog world out there basically in this sport too. And like Mick was saying, if you want to be great at something, it's the same drive. You have to have the same kind of commitment that top level athletes are having. So that's the best way I'd say it is.
And for people that haven't seen wheelchair basketball, or that know much about maybe some of the differences between the able-bodied sport that we see on TV every day compared to your sport.
Yeah, there's not too many differences. It's the same 3-point line, same out of bounds, the hoop's the same height. So none of that is different. The biggest differences would be like there's no double dribble, for example. So you can, pick up the ball and, put it in your lap and then continue to move. But you just have to, the travel rule is this, it's similar to able-bodied basketball, where in able-bodied basketball, you get 2 steps. In wheelchair basketball, you get 2 touches of the wheel. So you can either, take 2 strong pushes, 2 turns, anything like that, but then you got to dribble. And then, so basically that's probably the biggest difference. But in terms of other than that, it's pretty much same everything. So yeah, the biggest thing is just no double dribble, and obviously we're in a chair. So that's the biggest difference.
Okay, Dylan. So
Yep.
if you got professional basketball over here where traveling has never been called over the last 5 years, do they ease up the traveling calls in the professional league there?
Yeah, a little bit, just because I think more so because the refs aren't expecting it to ever happen at this level. So I think that's probably where people get away with it more. But yeah, I'd say it's a little more relaxed, but yeah, not a whole lot of calls being made over here. Let's just say that. Yeah, very physical game, and a lot of big dudes over here. So it's kind of let us play over here.
So so we went through kind of some high school stuff, college stuff. Now we're talking about you're overseas playing. What does that look like? Are you just playing for fun over there? Do you have a job? Is this your job? What's it look like over there for you?
This is my job. So yeah, I play every day. I play basketball. I get paid to play basketball, and that's what I do. We have at least one practice every day. Obviously, one team practice. Except this week, we just had a big win over the former top team in the league and just took over first place in our league. So this week we have a few days off. But other than that, we're every single day we're at least in the gym for 2.5 hour session, depending on the day. Then we have a strength coach that we have to see. I go to physio appointments about twice a week, so with like a massage therapist, and then I have quite a few different things whether my coach is asking me to do. So Pretty much anything, the owner of the team asked me to do or our coach asked me to do, then I do that. So whether it's, showing up and doing stuff for sponsors or, just showing up and shooting around so that a sponsor can walk through the gym and see that somebody's working out or something like that. Basically, yeah, anything they ask me to do, I do it.
So how did you get over there? Did you have an agent? Did they contact you? Did you contact them? How did it work that you got over there?
I didn't have an agent. It was about 3 days after my last game in college. This team, the top player when I was growing up, his name was Matt Scott. And he was playing for this team over here. And he was always he was a guy with Nike commercials and always known as the top guy. And he was playing for this team over there. And after I had a pretty successful last college tournament, he showed all that tape to the coach here. And there's actually 3 Warhawks at the time that were playing here on this team. So they all went to the coach and said, "Hey, you need to watch this tape." And then the coach watched it. And then a few days after that, I had a phone call with him and they offered me a contract. And yeah, I agreed to it. So.
So on your team, how many players do you have on your team?
I believe we have 11 right now, and they come from all over. We got guys from Iran, quite a few from Germany, Spain, the Netherlands. Yeah, that's the ones I can think of right now. So,
Are there
yeah,
areas
Sweden.
in the world that this is a bigger deal than other areas? I mean, are there some pockets where wheelchair basketball's a big deal?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot bigger over here. Germany, they love their wheelchair basketball here. Spain, like I was saying, Spain is very big over there too. And that's kind of the 2 top countries that most people go to, and most of the top athletes are playing at. They're in one of those 2 leagues.
So how long is this season? How many games?
We had, I think, in our league games, we'll have about, I think around 20 some, and then we'll do what's called like Champions League or the final 8. And so that'll be the top 8 or 10 teams from both the Spanish league and the German league, and I believe the Italian league. And the best of the best meets up in one spot and plays to see who's the best of the best of all the leagues. So it'll probably end up being about 31 games probably, and then it covers about 9 months is our season. So
Oh, wow. So 9 months, you're plugged in for a long time here.
yep. So I'll come back in the summer, and that's about it. Then I'll be back here in September. So
Okay.
Full-time commitment. That's pretty cool that the season is that long and that in depth. Like you said, in the States, we don't see that type of action for your sport. But how cool is that to have the opportunity? How old are you right now? And
I'm 26.
to be playing a professional sport at 26 and living overseas, and that's got to be very exciting for you to have that opportunity.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and like I said, it's always something I wanted to do, and having a few hiccups before I got over here, just kind of made it that much sweeter. Once it finally did happen, I was able to come play for them. So
Awesome. When you come back, what do you look forward to doing when you come back?
oh man, I definitely caught a few USD games when I came back during Christmas break. Love going out and just getting some American food, whether it's went down to some steak places in Vermilion, went to got me some fast food, because they don't have the only thing that I see over here really is McDonald's with fast food. So there's none of that Taco Bell, none of the Popeyes, stuff like that. So I definitely got my fix of the good food when I was back there. And and then obviously look forward to seeing, my family every time I come back too.
Awesome. Dylan, I want to ask you a question about, you've been open about this on social media. You've had some struggles.
Yep.
Can you kind of give us a snapshot of what some of those struggles have been?
Yeah. So it was in college and then, I announced about a year and a half ago that I was struggling with some alcoholism issues. And, that was some stuff that I wasn't, afraid to speak about. I had struggled for quite a few years, and, I had a doctor, people asked me, was it difficult? And I was fortunate that I had some health issues that came about. And so it kind of forced me to quit. And when people ask me, how hard was it? I always say it wasn't too difficult for me, because when I asked the doctor what happens if I continue to drink, he told me, well, you'll die. And I was like, well, that's a pretty easy, I'm done with it. So from that day forward, I just said, okay, I'm done. And I haven't had a drink since or anything from that day forward. So, it was quite the kick in the tail. And but like I said, from that day forward, haven't had a drink, and it's been a lot of self-discipline and a lot of, telling people that, I used to hang out with in the past, just telling a lot of people no, and but just sticking to it, and sticking to my guns. And I'm fortunate to have a great support system with not only my team, but like my family life with with my mom, my dad. They're great people and support me with that. My girlfriend is obviously, instrumental in, everything she does for me. So, having those two support systems right behind me has been huge in the whole way. And then I also, at the time when as I told you, at the time when I went sober from alcohol as well, then I was actually diagnosed with congestive heart failure as well during that time. So, having a heart surgery and then having to rehab back from that for quite a few months, and not being able to lift my arm above my head for over 2 months, and then, coming back and rehabbing for months after months, and then, having to come over here after only playing again for 2-3 months, and I had to come over here and kind of show this team that I could do it and I could play again. So, yeah, it's been a long road, and it's been an interesting last 2 years, year and a half. And yeah, I'm just very lucky and very blessed to be where I'm at today, though.
Amazing, Nick. Amazing story. We've talked to a lot of people, and, life is not always easy. And, what Dylan's been through is pretty amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Dylan, regarding mental health and coming forward with it, what made you think that was something to do? Because a lot of people who might even be willing to at least seek out help, there's people who wouldn't even want to do that. But not only did you seek out help, it's like, yep, okay, here I am. And really kind of laid it all out for everybody there, which would take a tremendous amount of courage in most people's eyes. What motivated you to take it to that step?
I was getting a lot of like messages and hearing a lot of stories about people and kids kind of that I knew, and, other athletes that I knew that were struggling with similar things like that. And I just kept hearing the stories, but never saw anybody in the sport of wheelchair basketball or in, any Paralympic sport or disabled athletics really speaking out or saying, hey, this is what I deal with on a daily basis and I struggle. And so I would just kind of like, I'm struggling with this, and I obviously know quite a few other people are struggling with it. Somebody has to speak up, otherwise obviously nothing's going to change. And I love the game of wheelchair basketball too much to have a bunch of kids and a bunch of athletes, just struggling in the dark. So it wasn't really a thought. It was immediate. I absolutely wanted to help right away. So, yeah, just putting myself out there and letting, anybody that plays the game of wheelchair basketball know that, I'm somebody that struggles with mental health. I've struggled with addiction in the past. So, I can speak out about it, and, if you need help, ask for help.
So let me ask you about that. When you decided, I need some help, I need something.
Yep.
Who did you go to?
My father. My father was the first person that I went to. Was him and my mom, and yeah, my girlfriend. Like I said, she kind of helped me out through everything, and I think they kind of knew too. I think at that point some of the warning signs had gone off pretty loudly, and so it was kind of a mutual thing from all sides. Like, all right, let's address this now, and let's get it figured out.
So again, as people are going through this and hearing this, there's always somebody there for you, right?
Yep.
Even though you might think you're going to disappoint people, they probably know, that something's going on. So, even though that's hard, once you just say, you just got to do it.
I would say it's hard to convince somebody, I guess you'd say, to do that, but it was very relieving to me, I guess you could say, because it was kind of like I had this secret inside me, and I was walking around with a secret for however many years it was, and it was just always having that burden on your back, or always having that thought in the back of your head, and finally just getting it out. You'd be amazed the weight that it lifts off your shoulders, and how much better you feel on a daily basis, just not having that secret anymore, not having to worry about who's going to find out, or this and that. So I think once I just said it, and once everybody knew kind of at one time, I think it just kind of made it easier for me.
Awesome.
Mick, fantastic.
Yeah. As we start wrapping up here, I got a couple more things, but first of all, we got to thank you, Dylan, for your honesty, your transparency, and for staying up late again, because it's 6 hours or 7 hours difference.
Yeah,
so,
7. Yeah.
We thank you for that. We do have a question.
Some crackpot just sent in a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's some dude named Fishbach, Bruce Fishbach. Ever get called for a charge?
Many a times, yes.
So
yes,
I gather from talking to you that you're probably pretty aggressive on the basketball court.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Are you a vocal leader as well?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I'm definitely somebody that doesn't really stop talking, whether it's to my team or to the other team. If fans out there always remember Josh Mueller from USD. Yeah, pretty much most people that have seen the two of us play have compared the two of us and say that it's very similar between the two. And I watched Josh growing up, and that's exactly who I wanted to be like. So I'm perfectly okay with that comparison.
And Josh played ball in Germany, right?
Yep. Yes, he did. So might have been him that put that dream into
one
my
thing from Josh, and I think it was like toward the end of his professional career, and I was talking to him, and he said something about how he knew it was time to quit, because when a guy fell down, when he knocked a guy down, his inclination was to help that guy up, and he knew that it was time to quit playing basketball.
Yeah, I can see that. It sounds like a very Josh thing to say. So yeah.
Dylan, one other thing, if we go back to, it seemed like, I was covering the basketball team when you got your leg amputated, and you mentioned these guys before, but that kind of that core group, you had Jeremy Kudera, you had Tibbetts, Blesson, and Reese, and distinctively, over the course of the time I covered that team, that was a really cool group, and it seemed to me that it was very typical of them to reach out to you and help you out there.
Yep. Yeah. I had a very special relationship with that team, still do to this day. And yeah, it's just Joey James. He was another one that was with that group. And yeah, it was obviously a very tough time for both myself and my family, going through all of that stuff that we did at that time. And they just kind of took me under their wing that whole time. And, still to this day, I always get, messages, out of the blue, whether it's from, Tibbetts, Blesson, Reese, Joey, all the time they're just popping in saying, "Hey, how's everything going? You doing all right?" Or, so it's been a special relationship from the start, and something that still goes on to this day. I've been at, I think, every single one of their Hall of Fame inductions at USD as well. So that's been pretty cool to see that come full circle too, from seeing them all play to watching them, because I think all of them are now in the USD Hall of Fame. So it's a pretty special group.
I forgot about Joy. I
Yeah.
apologize if he ever sees this.
Yeah, it's a very special group that was there to kind of help you grow up and mentor and, help you through a tough time. But, I'm sure we're getting some messages on here from some of those guys, and they're super excited for you and proud of you, Dylan. And we are proud that we get to know you and got to talk to you a little bit today. As we wrap up, Mick, any other quick questions for Dylan? I'm sure he's got to get to bed because it's like 1 o'clock over there, and you never stay up till 1 o'clock anymore.
Not anymore. No, Dylan, it's really cool stuff. And I mean, we say this all the time, but I'd love to get this guy back on here again, and just find out a little bit more about the life of playing professional wheelchair basketball. I mean, that's pretty narrow demographic, at least around here. And the challenges that you've overcome, that part of it we've covered a little bit, but a little bit more about the life and professional wheelchair basketball, and how it's the challenges involved in that, and where you got everybody. I mean, they're all good. Everybody's a good player.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely we need to explore more territory here.
As you were saying that, just their travel, comes to mind, how,
Yeah.
you got all these guys that have wheelchairs. And I know, Dylan, you have a prosthetic and things like that, but not everybody has that, where, getting on and off, I can imagine travel's got to be a little different than getting on the Coyote bus to go down to,
very
back
much
in the day, go down to, up to South Dakota State.
Yeah, it's very much different. So yeah, it's just a little bit more of like, we use like some bus lifts. Other than that, a lot of people just get out of their chairs, crawl up the steps. But no, we have a nice big charter bus that we take, that you would see, obviously, like the Coyotes or someone take. And yeah, so we just hop on a giant bus, and then we'll kind of travel all over Germany. So
That's awesome. Well, Dylan, we can't thank you enough for the time. And like Mick said, we have to do this again. We say this a lot, but this is one that we definitely have to do it again, and learn more about you, learn more about what you got going on over there. And, you mentioned those people that had an impact on your life. I guarantee you, Dylan, your story is going to impact a lot more people than you'll ever know. And we appreciate you being honest and open with it. And good luck the rest of the season.
Appreciate that. Thank you, guys. I'll be back with you guys whenever you want me. So.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about the Detroit Lions.
We don't need to.
Well, or we didn't even talk about what is this New York hat you got going. Mick and I are Twins fans.
That makes sense too. I mean, his dad's a Dylan.
We're gonna have a baseball season this year or what?
All right. Have a good night.
All right, guys. Thanks again.
You know.